Hello and welcome back to the Special Education Insights podcast. Today we have the incredible Dr. Eric Gaspard, who is a special education leader and also an amazing supporter and teacher and leadership administrative for English language learners. And he has more than a decade of experience and 5 years in district leadership, which is absolutely incredible. And thank you for being through all of that over the last 6 years, nonetheless, especially during the years of COVID. He brings a very strong focus on systems, teacher support, and data-driven decision-making with a clear belief that when educators are supported and barriers are addressed, student outcomes follow. So I'm absolutely excited to have the fantastic Dr. Gaspard here. So thank you so much for coming to spend time with us today. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Excellent. I'm so glad. Thank you. So you've been in education, like we said, more than 10 years and in leadership more than 5. What drew you into special education?
Wow. So it was a strange chain of events, really. I started in retail management, believe it or not. And before that, I was coaching gymnastics because that is actually how I went to college. And I was miserable. And so I had a conversation with my dad, and he said, find something that makes you happy and just go do it. And so I've always loved working with kids and watching them grow. And that's what got me into education. And when I took my job on day one, they asked me if I wouldn't mind going back to school and getting a master's in special education. And since I already had a full endorsement in English language learners, I said, what the heck, let's do it. So in a nutshell, that's how it all kind of like rolled out. And yeah.
That's incredible because you mentioned that your background was in history.
Yeah, Latin American history with a minor in ancient Greek philosophy.
Wow, that is very, very interesting. I know you mentioned about identifying barriers and isolating them.
Yeah.
It seems like that might be a characteristic for you with a background in gymnastics and in the things that you've done over your life. How do you find that you're able to just pinpoint a barrier naturally and isolate them?
I think the biggest thing is that you have to be a good listener. When people are talking, make sure that you're picking up on what they're saying. Sometimes you may have to like be a wordsmith or a sleuth and read between the lines or ask qualifying questions when you don't really understand what they're trying to say to you. I think you also need to be a person who, while you're listening to what they're saying, really pay attention to what they're doing because actions and behavior are also a form of communication. And some people, while they may not be able to articulate certain things, their behavior may tell you more than words could ever.
I could not agree more with you. I think language is so extraordinarily powerful. And even thinking actions, actions are
Yeah.
a language.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That is really spectacular. What are some of the barriers that you've noticed recently, especially in the last few years of your leadership in the district, that you've found that you've been able to navigate effectively?
So when I came into this position, it was a little bit disjointed. We didn't have a standard operating procedure. And in the absence of that, I said, well, this is an opportunity for me to write what I know to be best practices and just roll it out to the entire district. So that's what I took a few weeks, put that together, and then rolled it all out. Afterwards, a year after that, they asked me if I would be the director for English language learners because they appreciated the fact that I was systems driven and that I wanted everything kind of to be homogeneous between one building and the next. So if teachers were to transfer from one building in a district to another, the systems were the same within those two departments. I think it's a really huge thing because even when leadership changes and they may be going from one building to the next, they need to have something that's cohesive, something that they can kind of strand through and say, oh, that's how we do it everywhere. It makes it very easy. And when people know the systems and we come together as a group or as a district, the language that we use is shared and everyone knows what we're talking about. The systems that we use are shared and everyone knows where to go to find things. So that was the thought behind that.
I love that. Do you find that you create systems individually depending on what it is, or do you have a clear guiding light of like a checklist almost?
I think it's more like a checklist, but the checklist is for guidance. It's not necessarily a written in stone and there's no flexibility because we have to remember we're dealing with individuals. And so some people may need more support in an area and some may need less, some may not need any at all. But we have to be able to accommodate wherever they are and make sure that we get the end result that we want for our kids and for our staff.
Yeah. Is there a specific story that comes to mind or a specific scenario that comes to mind when to expand on it?
Well, I frequently get a lot of teachers who are new because we're a charter school district, and teachers, once they kind of like get their wings, they may fly off. And so I find that we are training and retraining. So it's really important for us to have systems in place. I know every year I reach out to the building leaders and say, hey, a new year starting. I want to go on your calendar to come into your building and do X, Y, and Z. So, for instance, when I took over the English language learners, there wasn't a system there either, but I wanted to present to the district the SIOP model to use as a framework for learning and supporting those students. What I found is that that same support system, that same model actually supports both English language learners, special education students, and general education. So we rolled it out building wide, building by building throughout the district, every team receiving the same information, the same method, the same way, so that when we had to come back and say, how is this working? We use the same systems and checks and balances for each system. So when we got together as a district again and people are sharing ideas, everyone knows what SIOP model training is. Everybody knows what they've been trying in their buildings. Everyone knows like how we come and check for understanding what we're looking for when we're looking about student engagement and student support. And so it was a very nurturing experience for teachers to feel supported and to feel like, oh my God, I'm not as lost as I thought I was. And the language that I use for English language learners when I'm using the SIOP model, I can use for special education and I can use for my general education students as well. And so it ends up being a seamless support system rather than something that is segmented and convoluted.
That is incredible. I love that you said the same method in the same way. And you're absolutely right. In that, then the language is consistent. People know what to expect and they understand the operations. And you're completely right. It takes that pressure off of, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. And it gives it a clear guideline.
Because that sometimes is the barrier. I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm not going to do anything, right? And
Yeah,
not doing anything is
totally.
hardly the action that we want. We want
Yeah.
you to be engaged and we want you to engage your students. And so removing that, how do I teach English language learners? How do I teach SPED kids who have these disabilities? What is an accommodation versus what is a modification? Those terms need to be defined. We need to have a shared understanding of what they are in order for us to be able to support each other and students as they transition from one building to the next because we're K through 12, but our K through 6s are in a separate building. And then we have middle school, high school, and early college at a different building. And so most of our students will graduate with at least 30 college credits, some as many as 45 college credits. And every student is accepted to a university or post-secondary education before they graduate.
That's amazing. Because one of your goals is to have 100% compliance also. And
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned about being engaged and be engaging, and then also with that outcome of having students get into college or with credits also. That's amazing.
Yeah. So the mayor's office comes to our district every year and they want to see our compliance. Like, so they pull the CUME folders for ELLs and for SPED, and then they grade you. You know, you need some support, you need some improvement, you're meeting the goal or you're exceeding it. Every year since I've been here, we've exceeded that expectation. And I think it's really just because of not just the systems that are put in place, but the buy-in from the teachers and the support from the network leadership that makes it all possible. It's truly a team event, and it's an event that like never ends. It's a continuum, and it becomes part of our culture. And when that culture is spread over the district, everybody is like doing the same thing. No one is feeling like we do it like this at our building, like this at our building. And then they start butting heads because which way is the right way? Well, if there's only one way and it's all based on peer reviewed best practices, we don't have that conversation, right? We just get buy-in, acceptance, execute, results.
That's fantastic. When that especially with how many teachers you have coming in, and you mentioned that you were a tourist area, especially when you're onboarding them, do you find that you're seeing relief in their face because of how systems oriented you are and how the team practices?
I think initially they feel overwhelmed. So on my email page, underneath my signature line is a link to every item that is produced for those departments. And it's categorized by documents, articles, PDs. It's all just a hyperlink. So it's a page of hyperlinks. It's probably 2 pages. And it just allows teachers access without going through you every time because you may not be available, but the access should always be available. Like for every teacher to self-pace and self-support when they're feeling overwhelmed or when they feel like I need a refresher on this.
That is amazing. So think about the teachers that have been there now for the time that you've been in leadership. How have you seen them shift their own leadership and shift how they teach because of your guidance?
So I have a story for you. This specific teacher used to teach with me at a different district. I used to support them in a leadership role there. And then I moved here and then they didn't really follow, but they needed a position. They were leaving that district and we had one available. So I said, why don't you just come here? And so I've taken that person and watched them grow. It's really interesting to say, what the feedback was like, your systems really work. I just feel like I've learned so much and grown so much as a teacher because everything is so clear cut, right? Everything is like built on something else. And so the foundation is sound. And I just feel like if I needed to go someplace else or wanted to go someplace else, I feel like I'm prepared to do that.
Oh, what a beautiful compliment and gift.
Yeah, I was just like, but I'm just doing my job. I'm just trying to do I think what it was, like in coaching, like you've had bad coaches and you've had great coaches. And so you know what you want it to be and what you want the people that are under you to experience. You don't want them to have that bad coach. You don't want them to have that bad teacher. And so now it's all incumbent upon you as a leader to embody what you wanted to have for yourself, but didn't get, right? And so when you do that, it's really interesting how things just start to they start to fall in place and everybody just starts to say, well, this is the way, you don't even have to chime in and say, people start chiming in. No, this is the way we do it. This is the way we do it. And they understand the why behind what we do. It's not just random instructions and like they're drones and you want them to just go ahead, execute philosophy behind what we do and why we do it. And people will be able to articulate that. And I think that's the most important part, because if you understand the reason and the rationale behind why things are in place and why certain things are followed a certain way, then when people start to push against the system, you go, no, you don't want to do that because X, Y, and Z. And here's what happens. And this is what the law states we need to do. We embed everything into best practices. What is SPED law? What is ELL law? And that's our foundation from that we use to grow up our teachers and support our teachers so that they can support our students in the best way possible.
That is fantastic. It feels very grounded. It's
Yeah.
very clear.
Hmm.
And I love that you offer not just this is how it is. This is how it is because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And we've seen the errors in the past. We've learned from our errors, and now this is why this or these systems are in place. This is why we follow this protocol.
Yeah. And I think the reality of the situation is no one person is in a position forever, right? At some point
Yeah.
in time, I'm going to retire, but the legacy should live on, and that's the systems, right? And so if there are people who are underneath me who are seeking leadership roles, it's my job to kind of build my bench of succession so that those teachers feel like the opportunities that come before them, they're ready to meet them.
Very much so. And I love that you mentioned a legacy and a bench of succession. Oh my gosh, because it truly gives you such a different approach. Not how do I want this? It's what is best practice for everyone and what can be carried forward
Yeah.
is extraordinarily helpful to people. That and also with retention, absolutely.
Yeah. So that teacher has been with us for 4 years now.
That's incredible, especially because you took them from where you were.
Yeah, they called me up with saying, "Where are you?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm here." I'm like, So, and there happened to be a position open. I'm like, just apply. Like, I don't
Yeah.
pull any strings for people, but if there is a position that's open and someone reaches out to me, I'm there to support, right? I have another teacher who just came on board in one of the elementary schools who I used to teach with at the high school. And so there's two of them now. So it's interesting.
That's wonderful. What are some of the challenges that you're noticing now, especially thankfully, knock on wood, because we said that earlier, out of the COVID years? What are some of the different challenges that you're experiencing now?
So I think people thought that COVID, once we had come back to school and everything was going to be copacetic. But in fact, what we're seeing is that we're seeing the ghosts from Christmas past, right? Those things are still lingering and
Oh,
those gaps are still there. And so we still see those gaps. We see them more so in our little people who during those COVID years weren't getting instruction, didn't have like interaction with other people, didn't learn how to share, didn't and so a lot of we see a lot of delayed behavior, right? And so we see a lot of developmental delay. And I'm not sure if it's trauma and it presents sometimes, it looks or can look like ADHD or just or some type of hyperactivity where children are just not able to function and self-regulate. And so being in the classroom can be problematic. I think what it is, it's a sensory overload. You go from
yeah.
total isolation to all of a sudden all these new people all day long, and I don't know any of you. Where's my mother,
Yeah.
right? Or my
Yeah.
grandma, or whoever that caregiver is. And so that is one of the biggest things we see. Other big thing we see is that in the high school level, it actually from like what was then like third grade up into like seventh and eighth grade, we see a deficit in both math skills and reading skills. So there wasn't a lot. What we do know is that the type of education that they were receiving, because I mean, let's look at it. When COVID hit, they were throwing everything at everything and hoping something stuck. And so really intentional instruction didn't take place until people realized that this was not going to be a very short stint, but it was going to be something more stretched out. And some people never adapted. And so we're getting children at various levels. And so we're juggling to meet them where they are. But the problem is there's so many pinpoints of where students are, depending on what their natural abilities are, their acuity, their curiosity level, their support systems and at home, not necessarily at school. It all comes together and it presents right in the classroom in that one little body.
Yeah. I think you touched on something so powerful. And whereas people can be so quick to market ADHD or ADD, when you beautifully framed it, that it's trauma.
Yeah.
It's something else that is. It's not that. It's not ADHD and it's not ADD. It's something else that occurred during that time frame, and that is extraordinarily powerful because when you raise people's awareness to that, teachers, educators, caregivers, anybody with other people have that light bulb that goes, oh, I was so quick to put them in this box and I don't need to be putting them in this box. I need to still be looking at them as an individual, as we always should with children, but very specifically how different that really, really is.
Yeah. And so those conversations usually happen with our MTSS teams. And so when they bring kids to the attention to the team, we look at not just their academics and their
Yeah.
behavior, but like how old are they? Who's supporting them? What was happening during that period where they weren't getting support? Were they with their parents? Were they not with their parents? Were they being read to? Did they learn their colors and their numbers, and their shapes before they came to us? Or is that something that now we have to go back and teach when we assumed before that was being taught with our middle school and high school? How much were they reading, on their own? Not just reading academically, but reading for enjoyment, right? Because what we do know about reading and comprehension, for the most part, not necessarily just with SPED students, that the more you read, the better you read, right? And you don't have to read 50 pages a sitting. You can read a paragraph a day, right? Or two paragraphs a week, something The practice is the procedure that develops the endurance for being able to read more, read longer, and start to critically think, that doesn't make sense, or that's fascinating, or
Yeah.
wow, this is so interesting. Where can I get more of this type of stuff, right? But when those things are absent, that's where those barriers start to like expand, and you start to see the frame stretch past the point of like, oh, how
Yeah.
we're gonna hold this together.
Very much so. So well said. Oh my goodness. Absolutely. If you could think of it something that other districts could, if they got this one piece right in supporting their teachers and improving student outcomes, what would that one piece be?
I think provide your teachers with professional development that targets their deficits and not professional development that checks your boxes.
I think you could even like bumper sticker that one. That's a really good one.
Yeah. If they don't feel like they're getting anything out of the professional development that they are being voluntold to take, what do you think the level of engagement is going to be? Right? What is the retention going to be? They are passive in this exercise. And we know that with any type of learning, the more active you are, the more
Yeah.
engaged you are, the longer and more likely it is to stick. And that's what we want. We want it to stick so that you
Like,
can use it, put it in your toolbox and say, I've seen this problem before. I've seen this situation before. I know just what to do, right? And it alleviates the stress ball that teachers feel because I don't know what to do to teach this kid. I'm like, "But you do.
yeah.
Just calm your voice, listen to your inside voice, and just go through your strategies and toolbox and see what you come up with. You got this." Sometimes they just need that encouragement. Sometimes they're
Very
just
much.
afraid to like, I'm afraid to do anything, and so I'm not going to do anything, right?
Yeah. I think it goes back to, especially with that personal and that professional development piece that you mentioned, be engaging, be engaged and be engaging. Yeah, that's huge.
So when we do professional developments, we do a professional development that also has an exercise built into it. So I will often ask you, bring your lesson plan that you're working on, or lesson plan that you are going to do in the future, or lesson plan that you just did. And we're going to do this exercise with it. I want you to partner with a special ed teacher or a ELL teacher. So because that's what your classroom looks like, right? So you should have those people's input in what you're doing when you're putting together your lesson plan, because if we're planning for everyone to learn, that's what it takes. You guys have to get along with one another and share ideas with one another if you're going to have results in your classroom. Build that relationship. And sometimes you have to make them.
You have an amazing philosophy. It is so easy to see why you were such an extraordinary leader in your district. My
Oh, thank
final
you.
question for you
Sure.
is, if we were having this conversation in 5 years or another
Mhm.
conversation, what would you have liked to see change, whether it's with your students or with your team or in your district? What's something you hope changes?
I would like to see some of the professional development that I present being presented by content specialists in those buildings, right? Because it's one thing for me to have my philosophy and have it be trickled down. It's another thing to have and maybe that the level of support, but it's another thing to like watch the seedlings fall and take root in other buildings and people start to like flourish and people feel supported in their building instead of in the district. Like my hope is just a couple of doors down instead of like a phone call and email, and maybe I'll see you on Friday away, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful. It was such a pleasure speaking with you, Dr. Gaspard. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your wisdom. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
I think what just one thing that we developed here that I think if you are going to walk away with anything and you're really trying to build that anchor in your departments that is going to like take hold and flourish, when you hold your meetings, and we hold weekly meetings, I hold weekly meetings with every building and monthly meetings with the building leaders. We always go over data. We go over what's going on in your building that day. So it's very specialized. But when I have meetings with teachers, my SPED teachers and my ELL teachers meet at the same time in the same meeting. So we discuss everything. So everybody is aware. Everyone shares the language. If you have that kid in that class that you're supporting and you see them, you know why they're being who they are when you see them. and you know what type of support you need to provide to them to keep them in the classroom learning versus being sent out and, suspended for a day. Because, suspension, while it may be something that we do because we need to, we really need to limit that type of behavior from an adult perspective and see where are we missing the support that these kids need to be able to stay in the classroom more
Yeah,
often.
very much so. Hit the nail on the head on that one. Thank you so much for spending time with us here today. For anybody who would like to reach out to him, we will have his contact information in the show notes. Dr. Gaspard, it was wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you so
Oh,
much.
thank you, also, Lenora. It was great being here.
To our listeners, thank you for participating and listening in this podcast. I hope you have as many now golden nuggets of wisdom as I do. And until next time, stay well.